Dawson Rider Wiki.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to my review for Mashin Sentai Kiramager episode 9. So this episode wasn't one of the better ones. It was much more of a classic filler, but it was kind of in the same boat for me as that Pink Ranger focus from a few weeks ago, where it wasn't one of the strongest episodes of the season, but I still thought it was solid and enjoyable for what it was, and certainly a lot more positive than some traditional fillers. So it was a Senna focused episode, and the primary plot revolved around her having this sort of old frenemy rival and sort of dealt with a little bit of her strengths and weaknesses. We start off when we see her training with Drew and Yellow, whose name escapes me at the moment, but they're training, so that's kind of nice to see that they're keeping up some training and they didn't just throw it by the wayside after last week's. And they run into this girl who seems to be a former rival of hers, and then we instantly get into why when we find that Monster of the Week is playing this weird game that I haven't heard of because it's not here, called Karuta. And my first thought was, Gus, don't make up words. But then I realized, oh, I know this game. This is the one from Diversity Day, where they put the race on top of their heads and they have to guess it. And so Senna starts going up to all the people with the cards on their heads and is like, try my googie googie, try my googie googie, and that doesn't work. So that's why she was bad at the game, because she was a racist. Basically, I don't really fully understand the game, but basically it's a game where you kind of have to guess this phrase before it happens. The way I simplified it in my head to get through this episode, that makes it sound like it was a huge challenge, but because I didn't understand the game, was it's kind of like when you're doing trivia and there's like a buzzer for like whatever team to answer the question, and you gotta wait for the full question to be asked, and Senna would always press the buzzer before the question was done being asked. So like they would say, okay, here's the trivia question, what is the, and she'd be like, meh. And so she was like speed over everything, and the reason that this girl was better than her was because she had the patience to understand what she needed to do instead of thinking or acting before she thought. And I like the solution in the first encounter where they're like, oh man, we're gonna screw this up and these people are gonna be hurt if we don't solve this game. And the other Rangers just shot at the monster. Like, that's what I kept thinking the whole episode. I'm like, you know how you solve this? Just blow them up, be like, okay monster, we're gonna play your game, and then you're done. But so, that was kind of funny, I thought. But basically it kind of dealt with that, and we learned the backstory of they used to be friends, and then they got into this rivalry because she always kind of, you know, sped through it when she needed to not think, and then her friend would taunt her about it. And then it kind of gets into this little bit of a balance where it turns out her friend was just so jealous of her speed, basically, that when she got the upper hand, she would sort of tease her and, you know, mock her during the game, basically trash talk, to throw her off her game, because she knew that, you know, she could ultimately beat her. And it ended up actually being kind of a nice balance. I was a little bit worried when Drew said to her, like, well, actually, that's not your weakness. I'm like, no, no, no. This is like a moment of character growth where she realizes there's a flaw to what she has. But I kind of like the way they ended up resolving it at the end when she's playing the game against the monster, in that it wasn't like, oh, you know, I'm gonna all of a sudden learn to be observant now. It was more like, I'm gonna play to my strengths, and her strength is speed, but instead of like waiting for the phrase to be over and to understand it, she would watch her opponent and sort of acknowledge, like, okay, he's about to move on this card, so I'm going to move on it first. And I thought that was actually really cool. It was a cool way of acknowledging that she has kind of a weakness for that patience aspect of the game, but she can use her strength to still benefit in a different way. You know, basically, her weaknesses are actually her strengths. Then the episode kind of ends more or less as you would expect. You know, monster grows big and they destroy it. They do use the new Mecha, obviously, since we just debuted it last week and you want to sell those toys. So we did use King Express, so that means Jokey got involved again. And Garza was involved in this episode because there was like a little subplot about him gaining that extra power after last week's confrontation. And he sort of discovers by basically being, you know, egged on by the Rangers or being called a coward, like, basically enrages him. Like, it's like a, yes, give in to your anger. So he kind of gets involved in that. And so he got hijacked again, but this time he like didn't mind. He's like, fine, we'll just show the power of this Titan by destroying the monster. Like, I don't care. And so I kind of thought that was kind of funny that he's one of those villains that just doesn't care about his underlings. Like, I don't care about this villain. I'll just show him the power of this by doing this, and I'm getting what I want out of this situation. I do hope that we don't have exactly a hijacking every time we use this. I'm kind of hoping at some point they either take control of it or they can just summon it so they can both use it somehow, because that was a really funny bit, but I don't want it to get old. But I did like the way it was a little bit different in this episode, and I liked that they kept that subplot going. And I think that was what was kind of decent about this episode. It was a fairly average filler, but I have to give it at least some props for being better than a lot of Sentai and Toku fillers, where my least favorite type of Sentai filler or Toku filler in general, or filler in general, but it happens more often than Toku, is when the filler episode will be about some rando character, and that's it. Like, it'll be about this one character we're never going to see again. It absolutely matters zero to the world and to the story, and the only reason it's a focus on a certain character is because that main character is driving around this filler nobody. And so this episode was good because we had this one random character in it, but it was used to teach us something and develop Senna as a character. And not to mention, we also had stuff going on in the background with Garza, which is a continuation of some of the main plot stuff. So that's like a good example of how to do a middle-of-the-road filler. But that's pretty much all I have to say. There really isn't a whole lot to analyze this episode. I thought it was a solid and enjoyable mid-range filler episode. I'd probably give it a 7. But what did you guys think? Did you enjoy this week's outing? Let me know in the comments as per usual. I almost said as per always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps, ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.